Hi everybody. So I wanted to take some time and talk to you about why I wanted to do an alien encounters investigation. This started way back in 2012. I had been looking around for stories and for my books, and read about this story online about this couple who was traveling from the coast and towards Amity, Oregon. That is about a 40-minute drive, I would say. I mean, if you're going slow, or speed limit, which is like 55 miles an hour. And you generally have to pass through the Van Duzer corridor and on Highway 22, which is basically the same thing. So this couple who had went to the coast to spend the day and have dinner decided, after everything was done, dinner's done, it's late at night, it's about 9 o'clock at night, and they decided to drive home, and everything was uneventful. And once they got home, they noticed that they were 2 hours behind, that the trip had actually taken 2.5 hours, whereas it should have just took 40 minutes, going very slow, which is speed limit. Like I said, I'm a speeder, so I will admit that. So I have been on Highway 22, and I generally go about 65, or it's a 55 mile an hour zone, which is pretty much what everybody does. So I wanted to go to the area and investigate what could have happened. So I did some research on the Van Duzer corridor and found out that there are some strange anomalies that happen out there. People claim to see strange balls of light in the trees. They claim to see mysterious people walk along the highway, which is a 2-lane highway. It's a very small highway. It's not an interstate or anything. And I also noticed that there was an Indian reservation out there at Grand Ronde. And so I basically just got in my car one day and drove out there, and I wanted to first go to the restaurant that these people were at and then take the trip myself to time it and make sure it's accurate. And that's what I did. And I actually got there in about 35 minutes. So they're saying that they were 2 hours missing, was pretty significant. So I drove back on Highway 22 back to Grand Ronde, and I thought, well, maybe I will talk to some of the people there in town and find out if they know anything about people missing time and the such. I drove up to this really nice house. I got lucky my first stop. So I drove up to this really nice house, big white 3-story house, if I remember, white pillars, looks like something from Gone from the Wind. And pulled there, I saw people standing up front, so I pulled into the circular driveway and stopped and asked them if they knew of anybody in town who had suffered missing time. And these American Indians, they told me of a guy and his wife who they knew, who had just suffered from that. Not necessarily on Highway 22, but in certain areas. So I asked them for this couple's information, and they made a phone call, and the couple didn't want to give me their phone number or anything, but they told me that they lived in Amity, of all places, and that they would meet me at a convenience store there in Amity. So let me just mention that as a writer, when you're investigating a story, when there's things that come up like coincidences or serendipitous moments, that is usually a clue that something's going on, like something's deeper than what you think it is. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens for a reason. So the fact that the couple that had missing time and this other couple, both of them lived in Amity, was very significant to me. So it raised a lot of questions in my mind. Do they know each other? Was this just some big hoax that somebody was putting on? I didn't know. So before I left the American Indian's house, he had told me that up on this certain mountain if I go up there, I would see UFOs flying out of the side of a mountain. Seems really big story. Seems, crazy. So I thought, well, I'm going to go up there and check that out because I had some time before I would meet this new couple in Amity. So I drove up the side of the mountain, went by the directions that this young American Indian had told me, and it was a long drive up. And so I'd stop several times just to kind of look around the mountain range and stuff. I didn't see anything really unusual. Definitely didn't see any UFOs. I didn't see anything coming up sides of mountains. I did see one lone building on a mountaintop that was rather odd to me, but later found out it's a ranger station. So I went clear up to the top of this mountain. Eventually the road just ran out. So, I was on the very tip of this mountain. And so I thought, well, since I'm up here and I got some time to kill, I'll just take a little hike. And as I walked on like a deer gaming trail, because there's really no paths up there, hiking trails or anything. I was on this gaming trail and I walked into the forest and I came across this area, this open area in the trees. Now the trees up there are really thick, and so it was rather odd that I came to this opening. What was even more odd was there was no grass, no bushes, no trees startling, So I'm in Oregon and there's a lot of logging done up here. There's logging laws that when they cut down trees, they have to start new growth. And so had this been an area where they cut down trees, they would have started new growth. And there was no new growth there. There was no grass, no vegetation, no nothing. But what was even more odd was all the rocks on this square parcel of land on top of this mountain were like burnt, I would imagine. I don't know what else to say. It's almost like extreme heat had hit these rocks and turned them all like an aquamarine blue. It was very surreal for me. I actually took a rock and brought it home. That was, like I said, 2012. I don't really have that rock anymore. I don't really know what happened to it because it's 2021 now. So, but when I did come home from that trip off the mountain, later I did research online and got some satellite photos of the area. So I will show you. You have to be patient with me a little bit because I'm trying to do this all by camera. So I will show you the picture of what I got satellite. Now this is on May 5th, 2012. So let me turn this camera around and I'll show you. There is the square that I walked into. Now you can't really see that the rocks there are blue, but that's pretty much what I walked into. There's a same photo of that same time. Just a few months later, you can see some of the land has been cleared there, but it's like I said, just a couple of months later. Here is another photo that's of 2001, so that's 11 years earlier. So some of the land had been cleared away, but as you can see, that square is clearly visible. The rocks and the dirt is darker than the light areas around it where the land has been farmed or cleared or whatever. Here's one that is from 2000. Again, same square. It's much clearer now than what it was. So here is 2000, same area, no square, nothing. All the growth is there, trees are there, vegetation's all there. But what I found interesting was that when I found a picture from 1994, here's that square again. So I thought, well, maybe I will find out who owns that land and talked to maybe a farmer or maybe a logging company. And what I found out was that that land belongs to the state of Oregon. So I thought, well, obviously they must log it. And so I went online and looked at logging areas that by schedule or scheduled to be cut down or whatever. And that area had never been on any schedule or any plan to be, what do you call it, deforested, or to have the trees cut down for lumber. So anyways, so going back to the day where I had to go talk to that couple. So I met the couple at the convenience store, and we talked a little bit. Their names are Robert and Dee Miller, and I asked them for permission to publish or anything, their story, and to make their story public, and they were okay with it, hence why I'm using their names. I won't give any other information about them as far as like their phone number, their address and stuff like that, except for the fact that they lived in Amity. I don't know where they live now. So we drove to their house and we sat in their living room, and I started conducting an interview with them. So at that time I didn't really have a video camera, so I just basically did it on digital recorder and then went home and typed that all out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the interview to you on camera as I typed it out, and we'll kind of read through it together. So here is that. So this was on April 22nd of 2012 in Amity. The interview was with Robert Miller and Dee Miller, conducted by me. So I asked, can you tell me what happened that made you feel that you lost time? Robert said, on November 8th, 2009, we went to the Valley of the Giants. That is like an area for big trees, for a birthday thing. And so on our way back before dusk, and we were just a couple of miles out of Falls City, when LaDonna, a friend of his, had pulled over and took and looked at this ball of light in the trees just 30 yards out. We were looking at this ball of light, and there were 8 of us. 6 out of 8 of us saw what it was in the trees. The other 2 was in the kind of denial thing. It was a ball of fire. 2 of them way over there upon the hill, but I can tell, and the other 6 of us could tell, that it was a ball of light no bigger than a softball in the trees. You can see the way the light was bouncing off the limbs in the trees, and it was giving off little cinders, like it was on fire. Little cinders coming off of it. When someone said, oh, it's going to set the tree on fire. We saw that, and we marveled at that for 15 to 20 minutes, and all of us came to decide what it was. That 6 of us thought it was in the tree, and 2 of us thought it was on a hill 2 miles away. Then we got tired of it, and we decided to leave. I did come back about 3 days later to go through the trip with them and bring a camera crew. And I wanted to recreate the whole trip with the family and the camera crew and such. And here is that day. So right here is Robert Miller and 2 of his sons. This here is a camera guy. This is a camera guy. And I'm obviously the one taking the picture. So this is the road where they saw the balls of light in the trees. So let's continue reading. He said there were 2 vehicles with us that went down. 4 in front in the one first car, 4 in back in the other car. I didn't type that out too well. Now there was a buck, and LaDonna pulled on around to go around the buck, and we followed the buck a quarter of a mile so that it might jump off the road. But it didn't jump off the road. Within 2 minutes we reached the town. The other car was behind us, but she didn't know the town very much, so we were not losing her. We saw her headlights when we hit the city. We reached Fall City. There was a main store there with 5 cars in the parking lot. The lights were all on in the building. And he thought, Robert, hey, they're kind of busy. And then we left town. We are no longer than 45 seconds out of town, and all of a sudden, LaDonna's, hers, headlights turned off.
I was taking a puff off my tobacco pipe and I seen the lights go off. My son, which was the driver, said, "Hey, their lights shut off." Robert then said, "Pull over." Here is the area, the road, where the buck was running down the road, and they thought it was odd that it didn't jump into the tree. We'll come back to this picture. Here's the picture of the convenience store that he found odd that it was so busy. So this is in Falls City. I've been to this convenience store many times. So he said, we pulled over to the side of the road. Let me see if I can get this angled right. Where we waited for a minute and a half and talked, thinking that they would come by us. It was just like she turned off her headlights, like she disappeared. Bobby, his son, pulled over after me, asking him to. He is the oldest of my boys of 3. We waited and we waited. There were no headlights. She was driving a big white Suburban 4 doors. I asked, could you see that car at all? Next page. Robert said no. As soon as she shut off her lights, it went completely dark. I asked, it was a white car and you couldn't see it? Robert said, it was a white Suburban, you know, but we could still see the town lights. There were the town lights and the headlights, but as soon as the headlights shut off, I said to pull over to the right, and then a little tiny car passed by her after about a minute and a half, and it wasn't her. So we said, turn around. I asked him, so describe for me the little car that passed you. Robert said it was like a Colt, a 2-door, maybe maximum 4-person car. Like a Geo, like a little Geo. He's referring to as a Geo Metro. I said, what color was it? Robert said it was night, but it looked like it was tan or maybe dirty white. Let me move over a little bit. I asked, did you notice anything odd about the car? Robert said, no, just small. Yeah, the oddness was the size. It was a quarter of the size of the Suburban that was following us. So Bobby then turned around and we went back into town. The town is so small you can look down both sides of the road to tell who's home and who's not, which is true. I've been in that town. The first thing I noticed as we were going by it, I'm looking at the store, this convenience store here, the one I showed you earlier. And he said, where am I at? They were looking at the store, all the lights were off and all the doors were locked, all the patrons were gone, and I remember thinking to myself, well damn, everybody must have thought there was a mad party going on that day. They all had to race out of there at the same time. Man, how could they have shut off the lights so fast? I then said to Bobby, go ahead and continue to where we see the buck, just in case it ran them off the road or something. It was Dee's birthday, that's his wife. I was supposed to buy my old lady a birthday dinner, sort of with everybody. It was going to be a big expenditure for me. So 6 minutes went by. We went to where the buck was and I called them up and I said, where are you guys? They said that they were already in Dallas, which is a 25-minute drive, which it was, already done with dinner and pissed off because I wasn't there. I asked, so you were the one that lost time? Robert said, not just me, but everyone in the car. There were 4 of us in this car and 4 of us in the other car. The other 4 already made it to Dallas and had dinner by the time we called them, so there was a minimum of 45 to 50 minutes lost. I asked, so let's go back to when you noticed the car lights behind you turn off. That was LaDonna's car. You seemed like a guy who was very certain about himself. I know it may have seemed like things were going. Let me turn the page here for you guys. There you go. By fast. How did you feel? Did you feel anything odd at that moment? Did you feel that you were tired or your heart rate seemed to increase or anything? Robert said, there was a calmness in the car about all of us in the car, in the whole car. Now, my oldest that was driving, he was 23 years old. He doesn't even want to talk about it now. Now, this is what happened. The people that were behind us, this is their story. He's talking about LaDonna and his wife Dee and 2 of their children. The 4 of them said that it looked like we were driving through the little town. So Robert and his The 4 people in Robert's car were the first car. LaDonna, Dee, and 2 of Dee and Robert's kids were in the last car, the second car, following them. The 4 of them said that they looked like we were driving through the little town, and we were driving like we were lost, like we were driving like it was foggy, but there was no fog. All of a sudden, it looked like you knew where you're going, and you took off like a bat out of hell, hit a left-hand turn. We took the left-hand turn and tried to follow you, but you were so fast that you left us behind. There was no left-hand turn. Their lights turned off, and we turned off to the right to wait for them. And then we turned around to go back and look for them. So the thing was, if you were driving and all of a sudden you pull off to the right, that is when we would have had to been taken under control. So what he's saying is, LaDonna and Dee were following him, and they thought he had taken a left-hand turn onto a dirt road where that buck was. When they did that left-hand turn, LaDonna and Dee couldn't see him anymore. But in Robert's perspective, they saw LaDonna and Dee following them, and all of a sudden their headlights just disappeared. I asked them, so is it just a straight drive? There are no turnoffs or anything? Robert said there were no turnoffs. We could still see the city lights, and that is when we did our U-turn. I said, to you, everything was in real time? Robert said it was real time, until after I made the phone call and found out that they were already done with dinner. I said, so a phone call was made. Robert said, yeah, but in my time it was 6 minutes later. But in their time they had already made it to Dallas and done with eating dinner. I said, when you made the phone call, they claimed that it was how long? Robert said, over an hour and a half maybe. I said, now let's talk about after the incident. You get home, anything happened to you? Any anger outburst? Did you have any unusual scars? Are you suddenly bipolar where your moods are fluctuating in extremes? Anything like that? Robert said, it's probable. I said, it's probable. What do you mean? Robert then said, sorry about the camera being so shaky. Robert then said, probable. Yes, because there's been some, I can't really say that it's connected to that incident. One of the main things was that the lady that was behind us, LaDonna, that was following us in the Suburban, she didn't want to talk about it and defriended us. So we are not friends no more. And here she is saying, well, that there were things that happened to her prior and she doesn't want to talk about it. We're talking about almost a decade of friendship shut off like that because she doesn't want to talk to us anymore. She didn't want to talk about the incident. She didn't want to talk about nothing. And she's not the one that lost time. I suspect that she really didn't want to open up and talk about it because it was too weird for her. I asked, did you have any buzzing in your ear at the time or since then? Robert said, I have tetanitis so bad now I'm like a human barometer. I asked, do you get migraines for no reason? Any ringing in your ears? Robert then stated, later when a friend and I went up to Gold Creek, the energy felt so intense. It's like you can smell it or you can hear it, but you can't see anything. I put out a few calls before you got here, left you a few messages. I told them what is going on. Bobby, his son, doesn't want to talk about any of this. It freaks him out. His wife then said, her name's Dee, he was in the first rig. I was in the second rig. I swear that they made the turn to go to Dallas. It looked like they knew where they were, and then they just sped away. And I thought that they were not headed towards Valsets, which is another town, and that was all right. I asked, so they made a left-hand turn on a road. Dee then stated, yes, on a road. Yeah, we took the same turn. We followed all the way to Dallas and got to the Burger King, and they weren't there. And then they called us up, and we were like, we are at Burger King, where are you? They said that they were still over there in Falls City. I asked them how they got back there, and they said they didn't know. I said, you never noticed that they were not in front of you at some time? Dee stated no, because once they made the turn, they knew where they were at, and you just took off, you know? I said, so are you figuring that they got there before you did? Dee said, yeah, and when we got there, they weren't there, because we knew exactly where we were going. I asked, so it wasn't odd to you that when you got there and they weren't there? Dee stated, yeah, that is why we called them on the cell phone. Robert then interrupted her and said, we called you first. Dee said, but we are trying to call you and couldn't get an answer. We were wondering where in the world you guys were. So obviously, Dee made calls first, and they weren't answering their phone, which is strange because that's not too far away. And then Robert then called. Robert said, I would like to have everyone get together so we can all tell our stories. I will probably get some return calls. I said, in some of the reports I read online, it says that residents in the area claim to have seen people standing in the road, and once they have driven past them and took in their rear mirrors, that no one was there. So it's interesting that you told me about the buck. Robert said, yeah, and this buck is stayed in the road 70% longer than any other buck I have ever seen do. I asked, was the buck by itself? Robert said, yeah, I mean, this buck had plenty of time to jump off and he didn't want to. And I thought that was extremely odd. I said, alright, I will be in touch with you all and let you know what comes up. I would like to go to some of the places that you mentioned and bring some cameras so that I could document all of this. Would that be alright? Robert said, yeah, that is fine. I can understand. Then I thanked them and we moved on. That is when I went and got the camera crew, and we came back several days later and went over the route that Robert and Dee and all them went on, which I showed you pictures of, what pictures I have left. So that kind of started something in my mind, like, you know, what was going on. I know it's only 2 reports of one couple, and then now this whole family, you know, with the couple and their kids and their friend LaDonna. So being a normal person, I had to work. I had a couple of jobs, and so I got a little busy with work, and a couple weeks later, after going out with the camera crew, I tried to call Robert, and his phone was disconnected. So I was not able to call him. I didn't want to show back up at his house uninvited because I didn't want to seem too pushy. So I gave it some time, and 6 months later I went by the house and they had moved out and someone new had moved in. So I don't really know what happened to Robert and Dee Miller. I'm sure I could probably do a background check and track them down. I just don't want to come across as creepy, you know what I mean? So I had to move on with the story. So in 2012, I had moved from Corvallis to Albany, and got really busy because moved into a historic home, and it was rather nasty, and so there's a lot of time fixing it up. I would spend 12 hours a day fixing up the house, working 8 hours a day. So it got really busy for me, and a couple years, I know that sounds odd, but yeah, a couple years went by. And once everything got settled, you know, I just kind of forgot about it. And you know how writers are, sometimes they will get stories and kind of shelf it, you know, and then eventually go back to it and pick it up where it left off. I never did that with this story. I just kind of just left it there and thought, well, you know, I'll let time dictate to me when I should pick up this story again. So that's kind of what happened. At one point in time, I had my friend, Aaron, a friend of mine, Aaron, move in, and it was a lot of tension in the house between us. Aaron is a good person. He just could not hold a job, and he's young, you know, whereas I was in my 50s, and so it was just hard for me to get across to him, you know, about paying the bills and making, you know, an income. So anyways, what happened was we had an incident here. I had a job at a hotel at the time, and so I had gotten Aaron a job there as well. And it was his day off, and I had to work. So this incident changed my life. I will tell you, I don't like dealing with the topic of alien abduction or aliens or
anything like that because I'm just not comfortable with it. Okay, with that being said, I want to kind of just go over the incident that happened, and I'm going to point at the paper of the testimony that I wrote down from Aaron and from me, and then what happened afterwards. So let's go ahead and do that really quick.
So this incident, I don't know if you guys can see that. This incident happened on March 20th of 2019. It gives a location there, the people involved. So here's my testimony of basically what happened. It said I was, let me switch my glasses here. I feel like Fred Sanford every time I do this, so I can see better. It said I was sleeping in my bedroom with the door open. I have always been a light sleeper due to raising children and for some safety reasons. I like to know what is going on in my home at all times. I woke up because I heard, let me see if I can hold this camera straight, because I heard the swinging kitchen door used several times. I used to have like a western swinging door. It's gone now, but it has a distinct sound to it, like a like that. My first thought was that it was Aaron, my roommate, heading to work. He usually works from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. on his scheduled days to work. I rolled over and looked at the clock near my bed, and it was 5:31 a.m. Then I remembered that Aaron did not work that day. It was his day off. I raised up on my left elbow and glanced over my right shoulder and through my bedroom door, which overlooks the kitchen swinging door, and into the hallway that leads from the bathroom to the living room, which is near Aaron's bedroom, which is off the living room. When I did this, I saw an immense bright light come from the living room and into the hallway. As the light receded, I witnessed Aaron with no shirt, socks, or shoes on fly upright through the air as if he was gliding towards that light. Keep in mind that this is 2019. I moved into this house in 2012, so I've lived here for 7 years. Never saw a light like that before. The light went away and there was darkness. At the same time, the lamp in the living room flickered on and off very quickly. This all took place within 6 seconds. I was still propped up on my elbow and waited for about 20 seconds to see what was going on. I got out of bed and went to my bedroom door. Once I got to the door, the hairs on my arms raised up as if there was electricity in the air, and I felt like something bad was about to happen and that there was someone unknown in the house. I backed up into my bedroom and closed the door and then locked both the locks on my door. I do not remember laying back down, and I don't remember going back to sleep. I do remember that my dog, Tyler, was in the room with me, and he never made a sound or even moved. I woke up around 7:15 a.m. and got up to get ready for work. Aaron was awake in his room. He told me about his experience as best as he could. He was really full of anxiety. I didn't put in here about that, but he was. And I told him what happened to me in a general way without specific details. I went to work that day and eventually came home at 2 p.m. I laid down to sleep. I was working a double that day. I got up around 5 p.m. and made dinner. Aaron and I sat down to eat and discussed in detail what happened with each of our experiences. Now this is Aaron's recollection of what happened. So it's 5:45 in the morning. He said, I woke up with a splitting headache. I sat up in bed and looked at my TV screen, which read 5:45 a.m. I left my room and went into the bathroom to find some aspirin, but there was none found. I went into the kitchen and poured myself some ice water from the refrigerator. I took a few swallows and then went into my roommate's office, that's mine, and took out his cigarette rolling machine. I went back into the kitchen and rolled myself a cigarette. I left the cigarette on that kitchen island in the kitchen and took the rolling, machine back into my roommate's office. I went back into the kitchen and heated myself a cup of coffee. I unlocked the back door and went out into the back porch. I sat down to smoke my cigarette and drink my coffee, but realized that I did not have a lighter. I remember that I had one in my SUV, and that was in the parking lot near the back door. I reached into the back door of our home and lifted my keys off the hook near the inside of the door. I went out into the parking lot and opened my SUV's driver's side door, which was facing the little parking area. It's like a little park area. We have like just to make an interruption, we have like a fire pit and chairs, so it's like a little park area. As I got my door open, I heard a noise like rustling leaves in the neighbor's backyard. I quickly looked through the chain link fence and saw a shadowy movement. I focused on the area and then a form stood up. It was around 3 to 4 feet tall, very skinny, had tight-fitting clothes on, it had no ears, but I could not make out anything else because the being was silhouetted against the morning sky. I turned quickly and ran for the back door of my home. Once in my home, I shut the door and locked it. I went to the kitchen window and looked out into the parking lot, but saw no movement. I went into my room to play a video game, but noticed that our Wi-Fi was out. I went into the living room and unplugged the modem and replugged it back in. As I did this, I noticed our neighbor, Dax, coming out his front door in order to walk his dog. I went into the kitchen and opened up the back door. I did not want to leave my SUV driver's door open and run down my battery. So I figured since Dax was out there, nothing would happen to me from the creature I saw near the parking lot. I went to my SUV and closed the door. I did not see anything unusual. I went back in and played some video games until my roommate woke up. We discussed a little of what happened. My roommate and I didn't discuss in detail what happened until we sat down for dinner. That was later on, which I mentioned. So, these are the kind of notes I took. Once we discussed in detail what happened to each of us at dinner time, we were able to understand the timetable. Aaron swears he did not wake up till 5:45 to 5:50 a.m. I know I saw him flying down the hallway towards the light around 5:31 to 5:32 a.m. That puts him up and around before he even woke up. He also stated that he woke up with a massive headache, which I did as well. My theory is that I witnessed Aaron's abduction return and that something probably went wrong and was not supposed to witness it. I also believe that what Aaron saw on the neighbor's lawn by the tree was a small gray. I believe that they stuck around to fix their mess but did not get the chance. I came to this conclusion because after I talked to MUFON, they pretty much let me know that that's typical. It astounds me that I actually witnessed Aaron's return from an abduction. Let me see if I can get that centered. Although I have 1,001 more questions, like why was he returning from the bathroom area? Why was there such a bright light and no one in the neighborhood saw it? I would describe the light as if a semi was parked directly on our front porch and turned its brightest headlights on into the living room for an instant. Aaron does not remember anything before he woke up. However, he has been waking up with marks on his body and a foreboding feeling in his bedroom. I am still pondering all of this and come to grips with what happened with both of us. I personally feel as if I witnessed something I was not supposed to witness. So the story actually goes on from there. I suspected that this may not have been the first time this has happened to Aaron. So a couple of days later, I had him call his mother, and who he's close to. His parents were divorced, and he called his mom, and he put her on a speakerphone so I could hear it, although I stayed quiet. And when he asked her, was there anything weird that happened to me as a child or anything odd, her comment to him was, I knew that someday you were going to ask me this, but I'm not ready to tell you. And Aaron said, what are you talking about? And his mother stated, whatever happened to you happened to me as well. Aaron got a little bit edgy, I guess you say, and emotional, and was asking his mom over and over, what are you talking about? Tell me, what are you talking about? And his mom hung up on him. I had to calm Aaron down after that phone call and talk to him a little bit, by not making a big deal out of it. Although inside my head, it was just rolling around of what the heck was going on. So I really kind of just was processing all this with the next couple of days, and then all of a sudden I noticed certain reports coming in of people seeing strange things in the skies in my town of Albany, Oregon, and then reporting it and or posting it. I didn't reach out to anybody. I just saw this stuff online or in the newspaper. I do have a sighting here, a picture of a sighting here. I'll show you. This sighting of this phenomena was on March 19th, 2019. That is the day before Aaron and mine and Aaron's incident. I don't know why I can't speak English today. So the next sighting, here, let me put it down here, was this. It's a little blurry and I do apologize, but I did print this off, offline. This was on the day that this incident happened with me and Aaron. This one was one I took on March 21st, 2019. It's at night. This is actually above our house. I was outside smoking and I saw something strange in the sky and I just took a picture with my cell phone. And this is the kind of picture it took. 2 days later, I was outside and this was in the sky above our house. This is March 23rd, 2019. Again, sorry about the lines on the paper. My printer was running out of ink. So, anyways, so there was weird things going on. So, I was not comfortable. That's when I called MUFON and talked to a couple people there. They explained to me this is normal for abductions. The investigator with MUFON that I was talking to kept trying to convince me that I was an abductee, and I don't, even to this day, I don't agree with that. Even though I still wake up with odd bruises, or marks on my body, but I don't know what that's from. There's nothing factual. I don't remember anybody being in my room. That's just where it kind of, I let it lie. So that was in 2019. It's now 2021, and an incident happened to me at work. As I've mentioned probably 1,000 times to you guys, I deliver with Amazon. And one day I was en route with my coworker, and we had a coast route, and so we were down mainly in the Florence area on the coast. Our last package that we delivered was at 1:05 p.m. In Florence, and so driving back to our warehouse, which is in Tangent, is about an hour and 20 minutes away straight, like if you just drive straight, which is usually what we do. So we took off. I remember it's exactly 1:05 because me and my partner in the truck had been talking about having an easy day, and we were going to get off early, and so we could have a lot of time with the rest of our day. So as we took off from that last stop, I was driving, my partner was my helper. She had put a neck pillow around her neck and decided to take a nap, which is normal. And I drove, whatever. I don't know how to explain that. I just drove. I don't remember anything weird happening. I remember the drive. I totally remember the drive. However, when we got towards Cheshire, Oregon, there's a convenience store with a porta potty. Anybody who knows anything about Amazon drivers, we're always looking for porta potties because most businesses won't let us use their restrooms, and we just don't want to have to cop a squat out in the middle of nature. So we look for porta potties, and so I had to use the bathroom. I pulled into the convenience store, which woke up my partner, and I jumped out of the cab and started walking towards the porta potty. The minute I jumped out of the cab of my truck and hit the ground, I was extremely dizzy, to the point where I was walking, swaying, my knees were buckling. I felt really sick to my stomach. I walked as fast as I possibly could to that porta potty, got to the porta potty, and before I could even urinate, I had vomited into the toilet, and then I urinated,
left the porta potty and walked back towards the truck where my partner was standing, I asked her if she felt sick, and she said yes, and she started walking towards the porta potty, and I don't know what she did in there. It really was none of my business, but I lit up a cigarette at the back of the truck and was trying to gather my senses, because I still had probably a 30-minute drive, 40-minute drive ahead of me from Cheshire, Oregon to Tangent, Oregon. When she came out of the porta potty, how do I say? I was smoking a cigarette. I was so disoriented. I really never saw her come out of the porta potty. And I remember walking towards the porta potty because I was confused to where she was. I don't know what I was thinking. I really wasn't, I guess. I don't know, felt compelled that I had to know where she was at. And when I got back to the truck, this is like 15 feet away, the porta potty from the truck. When I got to the truck, she was standing on the side of the truck, and I said, "You freaked me out, I didn't know where you were." And she said, "Oh, I went into a convenience store and bought a drink." I said, "Okay." And then I said, "Are you feeling better?" She said, "A little bit." I said, "I'm a little bit dizzy, but I'm not sick to my stomach anymore." And she asked me what did I think caused it, and I said, "I don't know." So we got into the cab of the truck to finish our trip, and that's when she looked at her cell phone and she exclaimed, "Oh my God, look at the time." I looked at her cell phone and it said 3:35. This trip overall should have took an hour and 20 minutes. So we're 40 minutes away from Cheshire to Tangent, which means we had only been traveling maybe 30 minutes. But now we're missing 2.5 hours of time. And we just sat there and looked at each other. We were confused, and she was asking me a ton of questions like, did something happen while she's asleep or something like that? And no, it was very normal. Nothing happened. I remember her sleeping. I remember her turning up the radio, and I wasn't tired. My eyes didn't droop or anything. We got back to the shop about 4 something, and we later talked about texting when both of us got home, trying to find an explanation for what happened. Later on, I did some research and talked to some parapsychologists and some people I know that teach physics, and they said what probably more likely happened was that we had a time vortex. So what a time vortex is huge. At some point in time in parts of the earth, huge amounts of energy comes out of the earth, and it's like a whirlpool. It swirls, and if you're caught in the middle of that whirlpool, it's hard to get out. So you're almost stuck. I don't know how else to say that. Like, time just stops, and everything around you moves normal. Although I knew I was moving on the highways to drive to Cheshire, I don't know how to explain that to you guys. Like, I was moving, but I was moving at such a slow rate of time that everybody around me was moving at a faster rate of time. So what took us 2 hours and 50 minutes to get to was only 30 minutes to everybody else. And oftentimes when people get in the middle of time vortexes or energy vortexes, they do have symptoms of dizziness and mental anguish, depression, and they do feel sick, sick to their stomach. So I let my partner know about my findings, and she felt that it was a good explanation for that. So going back to the couple, when I originally investigated, I think that's what happened with them. I don't really know if they felt ill or dizzy. They didn't really put that in their report. But when I talked to Robert and Dee, I believe that's what happened to them as well. And when I asked them if anything was happening, like the ringing in the ears, Robert did mention that he had issues. They had headaches. They had LaDonna, his friend, didn't want to talk to them anymore for some reason. even though she wasn't a victim of that time vortex. So, what does all this have to do with alien encounters? I don't know. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm right at the beginning of this investigation. I do have a lot of interviews coming up with people who have either had encounters or felt like they're abductees, to family members who have literally watched their family suffer from abductions, and have experienced some of those abductions with those people. I am going to hot spots where UFOs have been known to be seen. I am going to go to areas where vortexes are known to be and energy seems to be different. I'm going to do a lot of investigation and find out if that could be what that could be. Does that make sense? I don't know. So I don't know really what the end result's going to be. So you guys are going to follow along with me. But I'm doing this investigation because I need answers. And later on maybe I'll put this into a book. I don't know. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not comfortable talking about this topic. But I need to know. I need to know what happened with that incident with me and Aaron, and have a little bit more security what happened between me and my partner on our route. So I hope you guys do enjoy the episodes of Alien Encounters. A lot of work's going into it, a lot of traveling, and a lot of places to visit. So I want to just also let you know that I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for staying with me and watching these videos. You guys are awesome, because I'm doing this for you and you're doing this for me, so it's like one big happy family. So I just want to let you go, and you guys be sure to hit those likes, make those comments, subscribe, tell your friends. The more I get of those, the more videos we'll get. So you guys stay safe, and I'll see you on the next investigation. Bye.